Vayakhel, ideas in the realm of Gematria from the Parshah and Daf Yomi. Continuing on the idea of trying to find a point in the Parsha and a point from the daily Daf. This time we're already a week into the new track date, which is Bava Metzia, and Friday's Daf will be Bava Metzia Daf 9. And the pasuk in this week's Parsha is Es Yizdos HaMishkan Ves Yizdos HaChatzer Ves Meisrei Hem. The pegs of the tabernacle and the pegs of the courtyard and their ropes. Exodus 35:18. Rashi says the pegs are used to drive into the ground and to tie the ends of the curtains with them into the ground so that they, meaning the curtains, would not move with the wind. And their ropes, Rashi just explains the word meisreihem, ropes used to tie the curtains. In Daf Yomi, today's Daf, Bava Metzia 9, on Bava Metzia 9b, there is an interesting question that is raised by Rabbi Elazar about whether one can acquire vessels if they are placed upon an animal, presumably a donkey. But the words used in the Gemara are behema. Boy Rabbi Elazar, ha'omer lechavero mishoch behema zo leknos kelim she'aleha mahu. Rabbi Elazar raises a dilemma with regard to one who says to another, to whom he wishes to sell vessels, pull this animal in order to acquire the vessels that are upon it. What is the halacha? Can the buyer acquire the vessels by pulling the animal? Halachically speaking, we know that there are different types, there are different ways in which one can make a kinyan, acquire an object. One can lift the object, one can take it into one's possession, a contract, and there are a few others. This case seems to slip between all of them, although through the discussion of the Gemara, a consideration is made for something known as kinyan chatzer, acquisition by placement of the item in one's courtyard. And could the animal have the status of one's courtyard? Rava objects to this idea by saying, in short, that it is a movable courtyard at best, and even if the donkey or the animal is stationary at times, it moves. At times it moves and at times it's stationary, so it would not be able to function as a courtyard. The Gemara concludes that the halacha is that the buyer could acquire vessels by having them placed on the animal's back, but only when the animal is bound. And that's the key word, that's the connection point, tied down or bound. In that circumstance, when the buyer acquires the animal, it assumes the legal status of his courtyard, and he also acquires the items that are placed upon the animal. If you ever look at a diagram, a picture of the Mishkan, the tabernacle, one thing that is quite noticeable from the outside are the ropes attached to the outer walls of the Mishkan and the pegs that fasten them into the ground. It might look almost as if these ropes are holding the Mishkan in place, but as Rashi says, they are holding the curtains of the outer courtyard from blowing in the wind. In Chassidus, there is a concept of lights and vessels, known as oros and kalim, that physical, material, tangible, or objects with more density, so to speak, contain lights, more spiritual energies, more ethereal in nature. Another way of putting it is that something is enclosed in something. They call that livoshim. It's the light is enclosed in physicality. The tabernacle, the Mishkan, is one such example of physical vessels that held and contained great spiritual lights and energies. Perhaps the lesson of the illustration of being tied to the ground, being grounded, so to speak, is a quality that will allow us to acquire lights and vessels. Like in the example of the Talmud, the fact that the donkey was tied down allowed the one to acquire the vessel, and so too, on a more spiritual idea, is that the fact that one is tied down, meaning grounded, they can acquire the lights and vessels, the vessels of the temple and the vessels of one's own inner temple, contained in the Mishkan, or the tabernacle of our own personal life. The ropes that tie the animal down allow it to be grounded enough for it to function as a chatzer, one's personal courtyard, halachically speaking, at least from the conclusion of this Gemara. So too, the picture of the Mishkan being tied down with ropes can function as a picture of how being grounded and down to earth in our own lives can help us acquire vessels and lights of a spiritual nature. In Gematria, the words Chatzer HaMishkan, meaning the courtyard of the tabernacle, have a numerical value of 713 exactly. And tying that in to our Gemara in Bava Metzia, the words Kashira Bechevel de Behema. Kashira meaning tying, Bechevel with the rope, de Behema of a behema, an animal. The word that our Gemara uses has a numerical value of exactly, no less and no more than 713, which connects with the lights and vessels idea, which surprisingly and very interestingly, the words oros plus kalim have a numerical value of no less and no more than 713. Have a great Shabbos.